we're back on the road. Your daughter's in tow. You're promoting this new beautiful record with, with a quintet with you, or is it a
A string
quartet?
quartet, and we
String
have the
quartet with
rock
you.
band, so it's kinda like we're really bringing it for this little home stretch. It's gonna be awesome.
Now, do you balance? Do you have the band and the quartet at the same time? Do you kind of jump between tracks?
Exactly.
Okay, it's
Yeah.
everybody together.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in, like, ELO or, like, the Beatles, like, Sergeant Pepper or something, when everybody's together. It's kinda awesome. It's a real dream come true to be able to do something like that after so long not being able to play with anyone.
Absolutely. I thought
Yeah.
it was interesting too because I remember for "Are You in Love," you went to the desert, you got some isolation in there, and then you took a break, and then all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and I was like, "Oh no, poor Basha. She just did this."
Just just in time to be isolated for a couple years more. I'm an expert at it now. I'm totally an expert. It's
But I was
good.
wondering because it seemed as though, and again, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but it seemed as though for that album, you started to collaborate a bit more on a different level, and I didn't
Yeah.
know if that helped the process as you moved into the garden.
Yeah, the
Was that
garden was awesome because some of the arrangements were already pre-existing. Some of them
Mhm.
as dating back all the way to like 2009 or something like that. And some of them were brand new. And in all of the cases, it was really like, I think because everything was so uncertain and so crazy on the outside, that we built kind of just as we're talking about isolation, we built like ultimate isolation where everyone had their own little room, which was obviously strange for the quartet who are used to playing very close together and, even breathing together. So that wasn't really possible in that particular moment in time. But we really made it work. And it was really this moment. And I wanted to call the album The Garden because it was really this moment of like respite from everything else going on. And it was really a sanctuary. So you really at least for me, I really learned to let go of a lot of stuff. And because we were trying to record it live, I mean, we did record it live to tape, really old
Mhm.
school. We still had, even though we were in little tiny boxes, we still had the sensation of playing together. And in that, you really have to let go. You really have to just
Yeah.
give it up to, whatever inspiration or the moment that you have
Mhm.
it. And that's what's kind of cool about it. You can even hear like, because tape is such an imperfect medium, you can even hear like when sometimes someone plays too loud and it actually like compresses too hard on the tape or it like it feels like it's burning through the tape a little bit. And that's kind of like all my favorite old recordings. So yeah, it was cool to have that for sure. It definitely influenced in terms of collaborating. I love just being able to show up and sing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. Noted, noted. Yeah, I was really fascinated by the process because I thought I remember in, like, the previous album, it was kind of like, this collab with Meg and stuff was kind of new and all these writing, and then I felt like for The Garden, it's just all collaborations, and
Mhm.
it seemed just quite beautiful yet intense, but I guess I feel like that sounded like you had figured it out perfectly.
Yeah, I think it was just also because going back to these songs from the past and realizing
Mhm.
what still spoke to the current moment we were in, which was so crazy,
Mhm.
and what kind of I don't know, it's like that Bob Dylan quote, like, "I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now." I felt like, okay, I had some wisdom in my,
Mhm.
like, naive years that I didn't give myself credit for that was kinda helpful in the moment that I was in, where we were like, "Okay, can you breathe when you go outside? Can you do
I
XYZ?"
know.
So it was really kind of, it was cool to and it really we really just had so much fun that it was like everyone was sad to leave the studio at the end of the day. But it was yeah, in terms of the pressure or anything like that, it didn't exist on this record. It was just really like so much relief at being able to get into the studio and play with other people again.
Oh, that's amazing. Was it
Yeah.
was it hard to choose which songs? Because again, you're revisiting all of these songs from your catalog. Was it like choosing your favorite child? Is it, did you have like a giant list and then you were like, "Oh no, I can't leave. I can't bring that one out. I can't miss that one."
It was kind of simple and kind of tough in the sense of I really did want to pick stuff that felt like it spoke to the present or the future or what my
Mhm.
perception of the future was going to be like. Um, and in that you kind of benefit. Like I was speaking with a bunch of other artists. One of them was one of my favorite artists. His name's Jens Lekman, and a lot of artists that were kind of revisiting for various reasons, one or another, their catalog. Um, and yeah, we were kind of laughing because he said he had to he re-recorded his entire albums. And he
Wow.
said, there was all these cringe moments that I had to re-sing, and I was like, well, I kind of like avoided all the high school journal moments that I didn't want to. I had the benefit and the luxury of picking and choosing what I thought stood the test. Not that the other ones don't, but I just felt like those spoke to my present moment right in that moment. Um, and what was really kind of cool about it as well is like, um, in terms of like leaving stuff off, it doesn't mean that it'll never, volume one or something. Just like my favorite
Oh.
artists, like Dolly Parton or Willie. I was listening to a lot of like country compilations and jazz compilations. So especially in country, like someone like Dolly or Willie, like their songs are infinitely coverable. They do so many versions of the same songs,
Mhm.
and they just kind of turn it into an art interpretation into an art, and same with like every jazz musician, of course. And so I
Mhm.
just kind of felt like what I wanted for this record was just to feel like it fell through the cracks of time from another dimension, just in a kind of parallel universe. And that's what these songs would have sounded like if they had been recorded on some other plane. Kind of like this Willie, I found this Willie Nelson record that I became obsessed with, that like the versions of all these songs that he's doing, it's like I've never heard him sing. He normally sings with such it kind of like a chilled out restraint, kind of like he's so precise in his like chillness. I don't know how to explain it, at least how I perceive him. He's so
Hmm.
soothing in how he sings to me. And this was like the most blown out sing. Yeah, I've never heard Willie Nelson sing like with so much like all out like belting, on this one compilation I found. It was so crazy. And I just thought, okay, yeah, there's lots of room as an artist to just see what would it sound like if I lived in this universe for a while.
Mhm. Do you know what record it was? Now I'm so curious.
Yeah, hold on. Let me just think about it for a second. I'm sure you can. Hopefully, you can edit this. Hold on, hold on, hold on. It's called. I gotta have it
Okay, you know
saved.
what? It's no worries. It's no worries because we can always go back to it.
Yeah, I'm
We
gonna
can always
find
go
it.
back
I'm
to it.
gonna find it for
I'm just
you.
really quite nosy because I always think it's interesting when an artist is working on their own music and their own art, yet consuming and really experiencing a record, other art at the same time, and what maybe bleeds over or inspires or what is just more respite from the process.
Yeah, well, you kind of
Mhm.
can't help it. It's kind of like the same. I mean, not to get too deep into my gardening metaphor, but like you really do require all
Mhm.
these different nutrients, sun, water, different ways of like nurturing each plant, each living thing, and songs are like that too. And so I assume so is writing a novel, writing poetry or a screenplay,
Mhm.
or creating in any way as a painter. You can't help it but you absorb what's around you the same way a plant absorbs the sun and whatever it's exposed to. And you hope that you filter out the bad and you help filter in the good too.
Fair enough. Now, when you were, putting together the record, I wanted to know, you're an emotive writer. Were there some songs that, with the new arrangements, hit you in a different way?
Yeah, for sure. Almost all of them.
Yeah.
The one that I think about the most, that we kind of all in our little, like, especially because we're all in these tiny little boxes. Um,
It's so wild to think about that too, that you're alone together, you're in little actual boxes recording.
I know, honestly, it feels so sci-fi and surreal now to talk about that way. And
Yeah.
that's why I wanted such a natural world, even like
Mhm.
title, just to be like, okay, this music actually does come from something really physical and organic and not necessarily cerebral and like theoretical. In term but recording I Was a Daughter, which is a song, one of the first songs I ever wrote, and I wrote it from a very naive place. The whole record, Oh My Darling, is really like a celebration of being young and your friends and all the things you get up to in that time. And I titled it that as a dedication to everybody who was around me at that time. And so to sing this song, that the lyrics, I remember writing them in a very casual kind of like ha 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 way, like, oh, aren't I so clever? And then to like sing some of those lyrics back um, when I'm about to meet my own daughter was just very, very emotional, like for all of us, for sure.
I would be a puddle on the floor. I'd be like,
I
"Ah."
was, I was like, all right, I need to take a break. I got to redo this in a minute.
Wait, is it the same live? Or are the same songs that, of course you're kind of curated that you curated the Garden's track listing and you recorded these tracks and there's, the emotion there. But when you perform songs live as well, are other songs hitting differently or are some favorites from the past having a whole new meaning live in that regard as well?
Yeah, it's fun to see, and it just everything that we've been playing over the time. It's fun to see over this tour what resonates where. Certain
Okay.
songs for sure everybody knows, or but it's very interesting to see people, obviously in the Yukon, Dawson City and Whitehorse, singing Heart of My Own, which is where I wrote a lot of the songs from that record. That was, just kind of awesome to be able to
Mhm.
play these, this kind of revisiting of that, and revisiting literally the place where I wrote it, to sing it back to the place that gave me those songs felt really special. And yeah, it's cool to see, like, even Tall Tall Shadow, which it's a very almost Eleanor Rigby or like Beatlesy type of arrangement, but just to see everybody still like shouting back the lyrics to me from the stage is just awesome.
I love that you talked about Dawson City. I love Dawson City a lot, and I think it's really great that you had the chance to write in the Yukon as well. But there's a connection to the natural world, in places like that, and also with an album called The Garden, and talking, you're talking about, giving your life sunlight and making sure you have all these elements. What is your connection to the natural world when you write and create? Is that
Oh,
is that
such a good question. It's so important. Well, I think it's important for all of us. I think that's something that the last few years really taught everybody. We all were desperate to get outside. We all were desperate to reconnect in any way that we could, and establish that kind of, you had to, in some ways, it was a kind of solitude with the natural world, and that was one of the safest places to be. And so, yeah, I guess I've always tried to seek out, in terms of Dawson or Joshua Tree, I'm really drawn to places like that because it forces all distractions. Sometimes literally there's no reception, for example. There's no way you can just, distract yourself with your phone or anything like that. But it really forces you to tune out all the distractions, and you have to start listening to yourself because it's so quiet. Once you get up somewhere like Dawson, or just even just to get into a garden, like my little garden in my backyard is like not even 10 by 10. Like it's so tiny. It's like a little postage stamp. But if I don't have anything else out there with me and I'm just listening to the sounds of the kids playing in the alley, listening to the birds, the cats trying to eat the birds and the birds escaping the cats eating bird, there is, and that's all still the natural world. Like we're all part of nature, but just forcing yourself to be quiet enough to listen to your own body, and that's the most important part, at least for me, when I'm being, in quotes, creative. And I think just everybody needs that, whether or not they're a songwriter.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. We're looking so forward to seeing you on Saturday at the Danforth Music Hall.
Thank you for this incredibly awesome interview. I
Oh,
love it. I love the questions. I hope I did them some justice with my
of
answers.
course.
So
I do have a question as to where you are, because I assume you're at home. But is this little space? Is this your recording studio? Is this your? Can you give us a little
yeah, this is
scoop?
a little tour. Okay, this is my little room in my jam space. Hold on, it's kind of hard to see, but this is like, I got my piano over here. I got a little bougainvillea here. This looks over on the Mile End,
Oh,
and yeah, this
beautiful.
is my little, just some. It's kind of, the walls are a little bit bare right now. I have to kind of get back into. I have to redo a little bit in here. So and we were doing a big cleanup before the winter, but this is where some songs get written, where I try to tune out the rest of the world when I'm in the city.
Noted. I'm always just a bit nosy. That's with the Zoom interviews too. I'm like,
Oh,
where are you? What
nosy
are you doing?
away, nosy away. Yeah, I'm happy. I mean, this is also where I like do some of my like Instagram live streams and stuff. So this is like where some of the magic really happens online.
You know what? Before we go, because I'm so happy to have the chance to talk to you and nerd out a bit too, because the pandemic was weird, obviously,
Yeah,
but again,
I
you made
know.
you made the best of it, and now we are still, taking advantage of the technology that really became, almost everyday use in during these past few years. Um,
Yeah.
as an artist, though, that kind of flip to live streams and the connection with your fans online, what did you learn from that, or what did you gain from that?
It was cool. I still do them. That's the funny
Yeah.
part. Like when and so I've kind of been making this joke, like obviously on tour, I'm like, oh, this is so much better than singing to my iPhone, which is true. There is no substitute. But in a way, it's not, as long as you don't use it as a substitute, as long as there is still this way that, like some of my live streams, like people are watching from us every single time I go online. It's a huge amount of people in Australia. I obviously can't make it to Australia every year, even though I wish I could.
Mhm.
It's a huge physical and ecological cost and stuff like that. But it's such a dream, and I'm just so grateful that there's people on the other side of the world sometimes a lot of them tuning in right when they wake up. If I'm online at 7 p.m., they're on at 7 a.m. watching me or whatever time it is. So that part's been really cool. Just realizing, okay, um, that little feeling of being this little speck in the
Mhm.
universe, and everyone else is still doing their thing, like kind of I don't know, just it kind of gets exciting in a way. It's kind of exciting. So yeah, I just realized it, as long as I don't approach it as a substitute, but I approach it as its own thing, it
Mhm.
can be really creatively rewarding and just a lot of fun. And
Fair.
you just kind of, yeah, I don't know. If it was, it's just kind of like anything. You just can't rely on one thing only, for your like kind of creative well, to fill your creative well. It's the same as like, I don't know. I'm trying to write with other people, like we were talking about collaborating. I love collaborating and helping other people with their music now too. So just realizing this, adding more stuff to the soup
Mhm.
makes the soup taste better.
Fair.
If you
I
know what
like
you're
that.
doing, as long as you're careful, as long as you're not too
Not too much
much.
salt, as
Not
my
too much
nana would
salt.
say.
Yeah, not too much.
Excellent. Well, okay, we look forward to seeing you at the Danforth Music Hall. I'm so excited to see this new album performed live. I mean, again, it's all these songs that everyone knows and loves, but having this new way of kind of presenting them to everybody, there's a kind of element of surprise that I'm really, really excited from. Even though I've heard the record, to see it live is I'm really, really, I find that strings often move me very much so as well. So I might
I
be weeping.
know. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, I hope it's good weeping. Yeah, the quartet's amazing. Like, I'm so happy to be bringing them to Toronto. It's a great quartet from Montreal called Warhol Dervish, and we get on like gangbusters. It's so much fun. Like, I don't know. They're quartet is kind of like the original rock band, you know? It's like a chamber group where everybody had their own part. There's cellos playing the bass, you know, there's a lead. And so they really get what I'm doing, because, you know, it really is kind of this precursor to what we're all into for the most part these days.
I never thought about it that way, but I appreciate that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to sit on them too. The original rock band. All
They're kind
right.
of like,
I
I
dig it.
mean, a little
Yeah. Yeah. No,
bit.
I think I think I have to process that. I'm like, oh yeah, you are correct. I'm just thinking about like
Yeah.
the history of music and going back in time and be like, oh yeah.
Yeah, at
Also
least in
too.
that of Western art music. Like, obviously,
Mhm.
rock is still so much about everything that converges in the Delta, you know, in the south of the US. Like, it's not actually literally a lineage, but there's a lot of similarity there. There's a lot of parallels there.
Fair enough. I do appreciate I appreciate I love the fact that you're giving us a music lesson as well, because
I
I
don't
think I need one.
know.
I do. I need it. So thank you.
You're so sweet. I'm no expert. I
I need to
just
know more
play
about the
one on the
history.
internet.
Excellent. Well, you know what? We can't wait to see you live on stage. And thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh,
I
thank you
really
so much for
appreciate it.
having me. It's so good to see you.
Wonderful to see you. And we'll see you on Saturday at the Danforth Music Hall.
Awesome.